valuable KPI is that the time on page is meaningful, not that the time on page exists.
That would be like an in-person shopping experience where there is data that says the longer that people spend in the store, the more they'll buy. So you slow down your registers, slow down your checkout lines, so they have to stand in line longer.
I mean, every single one of us have hit a problem on Amazon, but it's because every single one of us are hitting Amazon all the time.
There was actually a study done by Wharton that found loyal customers get more upset when they have friction in the experience, and it's because they are experiencing more. Because they're coming and purchasing more often, they're more likely to have a bad experience than the casual, occasional customer.
Dunkin' Donuts, a personal favorite of mine, where the friction was reduced so much that it impacted revenue negatively. Because you would be driving by and it would automatically create your order and you could just say yes or no and it's your regular, but that stops add-on purchases. And so that feature was stopped because we want add-on purchases.
Welcome to the Frictionless Experience, a podcast where we lay waste to digital friction. I'm Chuck Moxley.
And I'm Nick Paladino.
What we thought we would do today is actually discuss what were some of the common themes that we've talked about, because with 50 episodes, that means we've had 45 guests, 40 plus guests, right? And we've had executives who are UX, we've had chief digital officers, we've had marketing people, we've had technical people. So we've really covered the gamut of frictionless experiences. So we thought it would be kind of fun to go back and look at what were some of the interesting themes that have emerged that we saw consistently across multiple episodes that were about delivering frictionless experiences. But let's start with when we started the podcast, Nick, go back 2 years. How did we define frictionless experiences at the time, or friction? You can go either direction on that.
Man, I think I was even quoted to say something along the lines of anything that stops your journey. And I haven't really deviated that far from it, but I'll tell you, there are so many moments within our, discovery of this concept that made me question that specific concept. It's a really interesting element that you can kind of just rehash as we're thinking about all the previous episodes. And anything that stops your journey, what does that actually mean? Because some things are necessary to stop your journey.
True. We've talked about purposeful friction, and we'll go a little bit deeper on that, where there's times you want to slow people down, like with a financial transaction. That comes to mind. We've had a couple of guests too from the finance world. So there's definitely times when it's good to have friction, but if you take out purposeful friction, does that change? Does that go back to your original definition, or do you still think it's different now?
I think it does, and I think that's why I kind of haven't really deviated that far. Because to me, we talk about product bloat occasionally throughout this 50 episodes, and product bloat to me is kind of defining friction, where the wrong power ends up creating a feature that has too much going on, and it's creating a problem for just about every user. Some user might find it valuable to have this feature on the page, but for the most part, it's not true, right? And so if you have 40 features on the page, 10% of users like a specific feature, all of a sudden 90% of users have too much on the page. So those kind of situations end up creating a friction-full experience, and it's for the greater good, maybe because the feature is proven valuable, until you think about the sum of the parts don't equal the sum of the whole, and now all of a sudden you're actually net negative. And those are the elements that to me, I still think the start of this saying anything that stops your journey is kind of the truth.
It strikes me as you're talking, there's almost like 3 different ways to think about friction, or 3 types of friction. Things that stop your journey, things that are purposeful, friction that's added, and in between are things that confuse or slow or distract you from your journey. And that's those 90 features that you don't need or whatever. It may cause you to either go squirrel chasing and not actually complete your transaction, right? Or it just is getting in your way. It's not stopping you from doing it, but it is getting in your way and making for a less enjoyable experience.
Yeah, and that reminds me of a personal favorite moment was John McDonald's example, how he was working with a brand and they said time on page is highly valuable. So we're going to add a music player to the website.
Is time on site really a correlation to revenue? And nobody could show an example of how it was a correlation to revenue, but what they could tell was hundreds of examples of why it had led to a bad online experience. And I gave the example of how we had worked with a company once where the CEO said, hey, one of the first things we really want to do is put a music player on the site. And I was like, a streaming music player on your site? Like, you don't sell music. Why are you doing that? Well, we really want people to hang out on our site. I said, who's coming to your site to hang out? Nobody. And they were like, but no, I'm told time on site is a really important metric. And this is a great way to bump up our time on site.
I love
and I said,
this.
but you're not going to sell anything. All you're going to do is drive your hosting charges way up because you got everyone streaming music off your servers. Like, this is a net negative by far.
And his response was just, what? That's not what's happening here. Time on page is not the valuable KPI. The valuable KPI is that the time on page is meaningful, not that the time on page exists. And so that's one of those areas where, you know, the metric is guiding you in the wrong way to define your friction, because in their case, they saw it as value. But if your time on page is friction full, then that's not very frictionless. And so how do you then get the ebbs and flows there?
That would be like an in-person shopping experience where there is data that says the longer that people spend in the store, the more they'll buy. So you slow down your registers, slow down your checkout lines, so they have to stand in line longer.
Hey, that one works though. The little candy aisle, that is like the most valuable space in a store because it works. It works, but to what degree is it going to stop users, or in that case, customers, from ever stepping foot in the store in the first place?
Yeah, just ask TJ Maxx or Five Below, where they put where you have to weave through the merchandise and all that stuff. And I got to tell you, it does work. I almost never not buy something in that little.
It's the little gummy worms or a Snickers bar or something. It's always little. It's all small transactions.
Well, yeah, sometimes I go big.
I hear.
So, Nick, one topic that guests often came back to is how do you quantify friction? Or the flip side, how do you quantify a frictionless experience? How can you numerically get to that? And so several guests talked about that. Amir Rosenberg from, at the time, Capital One, talked about tying technical friction to page speed errors, et cetera, to business metrics.
In a B2B experience website, or whether you're looking for revenues, for example, in retail or hospitality, when you show developers and you show, frankly, the entire organization from HR all the way to developers and marketing and so forth, you show the entire organization, what is the implication of 5 seconds on your checkout page on your bottom line revenue? That is very impactful and very deep and is non-arguable. You look at the numbers and you see what happens. And that also facilitates the required investment in improving those numbers.
And then Scott Smith from FanDuel talked about the importance of using data to quantify friction and secure buy-in for digital improvements.
I think that if you just look at our OKRs across the team, we understood that if we could impact the amount of traffic we could get into the experience, and then measure how many people were actually converting, you can see, there were opportunities. It was very evident in the data to be able to see where we needed to improve upon friction opportunities and lower levels of conversion rates.
So there's kind of a common theme coming out here that the quantification allows you to focus your efforts and prove enough value that the business is willing to invest to fix it.
Oh yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. That's the whole game, right? It's a game of priority. It's a game of figuring out what is the most valuable. And so if let's imagine you have someone who's working on optimization and you have someone who's working on net new. And that person that's working on net new goes out and they research and they find out that it's going to be $150 million benefit over the course of the next year. How do you combat that and get priority over that person if you don't prove that you're going to get $150 million over the next year? It's exactly what you have to do. You have to figure out how to quantify and combat, sell the story. The story is more important than anything else. Let's talk about the story of what it means for digital friction. That's going to be the user is struggling to be able to get through the flow, despite the fact that the features that we have are valuable features. You need to be able to quantify, tell that story, get those executives to buy into your project so that you get those engineers to be able to dial in to your project. You don't get the priority, you don't get the deployment. It's that simple.
Well, and I think the quantifying is important for organizations of any size. At the very largest organizations, in the very largest websites, a friction point could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix. So it's not an insignificant investment. They need the justification for it. In smaller organizations, and all organizations today are limited in resources. You can't do everything. So you've got to figure out where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. And the only way to do that is quantifying.
Meaningfully too. I mean, you could quantify inaccurately, and you've done so. You've just misled your organization and you're working on the wrong aspects. So if you don't functionally think about the methods with which you're quantifying, make sure that they are vetted, proven, and defendable, then you're going to go in the same inaccurate path. So stake your claim on something that's meaningful, follow it, vet it, and follow it through. Make sure that you actually quantify it back to the actual result, because if you don't think about the final result, and you just stop at saying, hey, the A/B test proved it. Okay, go live. Now show me that it actually came through. Because that's what you actually have to do. If you're not going to follow it all the way through to the end result, then you're not going to be able to know that you're actually going in the right direction. Now, you might get the organizational buy-in, but you're not actually getting the revenue.
And to be clear, when we're saying quantifying, we're not just saying put a number on it. Like you can have page speed that, you can quantify and say, oh, it's now 3 seconds faster. But when we're talking quantifying, we're talking taking it back to a meaningful metric such as revenue. So if you're an e-commerce retailer and you reduce the speed of that page by 3 seconds, will that deliver an increase in revenue? If so, how much? And then on the back end, did you actually deliver that increase in revenue?
Yeah, for sure. Outcome-based entirely. Now, most outcomes are going to be revenue-based, but it doesn't have to be, right? This could be signups. This could be form entries. This could be anything that you need to be able to say, I've finally gotten someone through to complete their journey. Hey, this gets back to defining friction. I mean, even click-through rate. Like click-through rate can be a simple one, right? It doesn't have to be conversion. You have a CTA at all. You want to be able to get that action, right? It's that action. Let's validate that action. Let's create more of that action. That's what we really want.
Although some actions are worth more than other actions. A completed purchase, for example, or a completed application versus simply clicking through.
But Chuck, what you're alluding to is really what I'm trying to say. This is about quantifying actions that compare to revenue. And some actions are just simply more valuable, but you have to measure these in the context of the value. For instance, something like a Costco or a Sam's Club. What's more valuable, a single transaction that they're submitting or a new membership? The membership is way more valuable, even though the dollars probably aren't even close. The lifetime of that membership going to absolutely trump the transaction.
True, which is a long-term view that not everybody can take as that lifetime value of a customer, right? Because a customer for any brand, the first purchase could become a 2-year love affair or, a one-time transactional event. So,
but that's true for every brand. Every brand has membership, whether you like it or not.
In today's world where a lot of transactions happen digitally, trust and loyalty is built, because most often don't have a person involved, right? So it's not like you can have a great cashier that's checking you out or whatever, right? So, because it's all digital. So how do you build trust and loyalty? The premise has been you build that with frictionless experiences. That's the core benefit.
I guess maybe you have a brand team, or you have a UX team, UI team that's going out there trying to build these great experiences. But at the end of it is that users and customers enjoy that experience and they keep coming back for more. I have a great example. It's what's in my coffee cup, coffee beans. They come on a regular basis. They're delivered to me and it's exceptional. Paradise Roasters. I'll happily freely promote them. They're not a sponsor, but they're incredible. You guys need to subscribe. They are giving me such a fantastic experience just because their product is so good. I don't care that sometimes their shipment comes late, and sometimes it's delay inside their roasting that creates a backup, and sometimes I get 3 pounds of it all at once, and now all of a sudden it's queued up. Now, that might not be ideal for everybody, but I don't care because it's so exceptional and I am so loyal to them. I haven't even considered going to somebody else. So they can have these little friction hiccups. But you know what happens and doesn't matter to me? I'm still a subscriber. I'm still loyal to them. And I'm still going to tell you, go subscribe. It's the best coffee you've ever had.
Mike Shady talked about that in his episode where we talked about, and I think I shared the data or shared at least a comment that there was a study done that says if you have a problem and it's resolved, you become more loyal. And he talked about the fact that sometimes your most loyal customers experience the most friction because they're coming to your site more often. They're doing more transactions. There's more risk. There's going to be a problem or some sort of friction. You commented about people who are frequent customers. So you get them to come once, right? You get their loyalty to come back. There was actually a study done by Wharton that found loyal customers get more upset when they have friction in the experience. And it's because they are experiencing more. Because they're coming and purchasing more often, they're more likely to have a bad experience than the occasional customer. It's kind of an interesting paradigm. So you can actually inflict more pain on your most loyal customers in that way, if you're not dealing with the usability and functionality of the purchase process.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point, because when you think about it from a home improvement perspective, the customer that's coming in the most and having the repeated experience with you many times is the pro. And that's why it makes it so important for that population to be looked at uniquely. I mean, the both Lowe's and Depot have been a pro-focused organization for a while. Lowe's has done a lot to double down in that space and really make it known that, hey, we're not going to lose the pro, and we need to be able to build that base.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, that's just a law of averages, really. You go experience a specific brand 10 times, it's more likely that you'll hit friction than if you experience it once. If you experience it 1,000 times, I mean, every single one of us have hit a problem on Amazon, but it's because every single one of us are hitting Amazon all the time.
Well, and Michael Hinshaw, you'll recall, talked about the touch points, eliminating friction across touch points, and that creates that trust and loyalty.
And in that mailing, the intent was to provide a backup for the code, the password that the installer had given them. And so marketing's like, well, we're sending this thing anyhow. Why don't we send them, this flyer, that flyer, this other information? And we're doing our research and found out that the business owners, when they got this, they were so upset. They were angry. They were like, I can't believe that this company is putting my personal password in the mail as an excuse to send me all this marketing crap.
I feel that is something that bothered the heck out of me with anything dealing with like your mortgage, right? As soon as you get a statement with your mortgage, when you first get one, you're getting loaded up with all these like mortgage insurance and we can insure your home. It's all just advertisements loaded into what should have just been the end of the transaction.
Yep. And that's the kind of thing it actually doesn't accomplish the goal. And so in this instance, we said, okay, that's an eliminate. And they've saved something like $5 million a year, eliminating that one touch point, and they improve customer satisfaction. Boom. Right?
Win-win. I think what we're saying is you can't eliminate 100% of friction. Some people are going to experience friction in all the various ways that it could occur, even if it's seasonality and things like that may be out of the brand's control. But it's the sum total. And if the brand cares about removing friction in general and focuses on it, they're generally going to provide a more frictionless experience than competitors.
You're looking at an understanding of talking about whether or not the full journey is considered, right? If all you're doing is looking at an individual time somebody walks into a store and an individual time of when somebody hits a website, but you're not connecting the fact that their store visit created the website visit in terms of how you're building that story about friction, then you're missing it. I mean, you have to think about all the different ways that you can interface. You had a great True Classic example.
Oh yes, that was Brianna Moreno was our guest from True Classic, and she did something that I think was the first time we had a guest actually give us gift cards so we could go experience a brand, which is kind of cool. So we all went and ordered True Classic merchandise, and I ended up ordering, because I just don't wear t-shirts a lot, and I ordered shirts and I didn't get the right size, or I got the size I ordered, it wasn't the right size for me, and the return experience was exceptional. The ease with which they made it, and they did something that even, I don't know if Amazon, my experience with Amazon is if you've got to swap out an item, you have to do a return and buy it again. And in their case, I was able to do the whole thing in a single transaction. I could say, hey, this is the wrong size. This is the size I need. One transaction. They gave me a thing to go drop it at Staples or Office Max or somewhere where they had a drop arrangement. I dropped it, and then the new shirt arrived, and I was all taken care of. I didn't have to worry about losing any of my discounts in the original order. I did it all in one transaction. And I thought that was pretty exceptional, and therefore made me more loyal. Hey, Nick, remind me again, how much money can a retailer lose if their site is just 0.1 seconds slower during Black Friday?
Millions. And I'm not exaggerating. We've seen it in the data.
Which is why we've pulled together the 2025 Black Friday Cyber Monday Performance Playbook.
Yep. And that's real tactics from top retailers, includes core web vitals, performance budgets, checkout speed tips, and more.
If you're prepping for Black Friday, you need this. It's free, ungated, and honestly
could save your holiday revenue.
Download it at bluetriangle.com/ebook. Or we'll put the link in the show notes. And then the final one on the frictionless experiences I was thinking back was Vijay Jayarama from Walmart, where he was talking about the way they were able to deliver flowers same day for Valentine's and remove friction from that experience. That's what Walmart is all about.
How do I get a frictionless life? That's Walmart coming in and giving drone delivery. But also, I'm a forgetful husband, and I don't know that it's February 14th. And I'm like, oh no, but I'm also very busy, so I'm constantly working. That is defining friction in a revolutionary way, because this is the friction of the life and how you come through and solve that. And it's more about how you create those digital experiences that allow you to alleviate that. That's really cool. This is the first time we've been talking about that.
Yeah, Nick, I'll give you one more item on this. Like, we are all continuously distracted with so many different things that are going on in our life. Our lives are getting busier and busier, more things that we are like trying to do at the same time, right? It was not this way in our grandma's days where life was a little bit more smoother, easier, it was like going on. So when the person wants to buy flowers, to get it delivered at their house around like 7 p.m., 8:30 p.m., whatever it might be, saying like, that's when I'm going to be home, let me get that. The online experience needs to be frictionless as well, because you have like 2 minutes or under for you to like figure out what those flowers are, buy those flowers, schedule it for 8:30 and get it out of it. So the online experience needs to be as efficient as you possibly can.
Another good example of brands that care.
Not only do they care, but it's like they want to solve the friction of your life. Like, that's what his message was. It wasn't the friction of Walmart that he was solving. It was the friction of the fact that I forgot that it's my wife's birthday and I need to get flowers, or didn't prep for Valentine's Day, forgot to get the reservation. Now all of a sudden you're going to Steak and Shake instead of going to somewhere to get an actual steak, and you're scrambling to go get some flowers, and you can't leave the house. You want to go ahead and submit an order. You get a same day delivery from Walmart to save the day. That is solving my friction. That's not solving the friction of Walmart. Like, that's cool. That's cool.
So we've talked about a lot of other topics. I wish we had time to dive into all of them, but we've covered a few in this episode. But we've also talked, as I think back of episodes, we talked about the whole phygital experience, which is physical and digital, and buy online, pick up in store, and what are the challenges that come with that, and where does friction enter those experiences. And we had tons of guests that talked about that. We talked about customer experience and how very often what happens after somebody buys and how do you deliver frictionless experiences. We talked about employee experience, like with Dennis Perpetua and a few people with how do we streamline and remove friction from employee experiences.
How do you actually tie and measure the employee experience to those business outcomes? And that's probably the key. And that's the point of view I take with the 60% of the C-suites that have not bought into employee experience being valuable. That's the area where I say, well, let's see if we can trace that. Let's see if we can eliminate some of that friction from the employee's experience so they can be more productive, so that they can improve your customer's experience. And part of that, and one of the things that's a bit short-sighted on a statement saying, well, if they hit friction tough, is, I said I wasn't going to comment on it. The cost of replacing talent is much higher. Acquisition of talent is significantly higher than just removing some of the friction that they may be having. And on the backside of that, obviously, you're getting a happier, more productive employee that's better able to serve your customers.
We talked about personalization, for example, with Catherine Geniak from American Eagle, and a number of other guests have talked about personalization and how that personalizing removes friction and makes for a better experience.
We're always trying to look primarily at, what's our RPV going to be at the end of the day? That doesn't necessarily mean that every experience is designed to improve RPV. That's just our sort of like first gut check, is like, we don't want to do anything that's going to probably bring in less business for us. But what we find is that those two things go hand in hand. When we create a more seamless experience, when we remove friction points, usually that makes it easier for the customer to shop. And so we like to really tie those ideas together.
We've talked a lot about the people side of frictionless experiences. How do you get organizational level or C-level organizational buy-in? And how do you keep teams working together? Because there's natural friction between teams and between people when you put, 5 different teams working on a single experience. And so there's a number of guests that talked about that. So, and then the final topic was purposeful friction. When do you add friction to the experience to make it potentially better or safer or perceived better? Certainly, we've talked to a number of guests in financial services where adding friction makes for a better experience. Think of Satish from Ally, where he talked about if the transaction happens too quickly, people suspect it's not good.
So there is this notion of, I need to remove friction from everything that I do, but at what cost? So the team built the ability to open a new account. Let's assume it's a savings account. Like, you are already a customer. We know everything about you. You're opening a new CD. And they called it one-click account opening. Literally, it was one click. It says, do you want to open a new CD? Just enter the number, whatever dollar amount. I don't remember the exact screens right now, but it was one screen, one click. The tech was built. I mean, obviously mocked up tech, right? But it was built. And in the usability studies, people are like, okay, what else? Well, I mean, am I not supposed to read something? Should I not be seeing something? Did I actually open an account? That is the most intense version of removing friction. To the extent that you're scaring your customers. Like, this is not real. too good to be true scenario, right? So we literally had to create a screen and have them click a checkbox to say you are actually opening an account. It is true.
Bobby Joe from Nationwide talked about, if you make it too easy to withdraw all your life savings, for example, you might regret the purchase later. So you have to make sure there's enough friction to prevent that.
Like money is emotional, right? It is the ability to provide for your family. It is like it's all those things. And so I think that very few people, very, very few people have the ability to dispassionately look at this investment is better than this investment, therefore I'm going to do it. There's lots of emotional factors at play around relationships with debt and around savings and how much is enough for retirement and when am I ready for retirement. And so there's a lot of emotion involved with what I think sometimes can be looked at as like, this is just a dollars and cents decision.
It's so funny you mentioned HELOC because I was all of this is making me think of a screw up I did. And I wasn't going to bring it up, and then you mentioned it, but we had to do a HELOC. We had an unexpected financial event that we had to do a quick HELOC on, and I got it at like a 3% at the time. So, like a really great rate. And when you pull the money out, there are two ways to pull it out that they didn't clearly explain. I picked the wrong way that locked us into a fixed payment, a fixed fee every month of $150. The interest rate doesn't matter. And once I did it and I realized what I did, within the 30 days, there was no undoing it. The only way would be to pay it off and to do it again. And I'm like, well, that's not going to happen. Yeah. So I was in a rush. I didn't read through everything carefully. I was doing it online and doing it quickly. And so 100% I can relate to all of that.
That is a really good example of when they should have introduced more friction into the system.
And then Tutu from Eventbrite talked about fraud and how you prevent fraud with a certain amount of friction.
I think it's anytime you have a marketplace of any sort, you can expect that the bad actors will come out in some way, form, or fashion. And what last year did was, and especially as people start to go on more online shopping, you start to see more of that. So a lot of companies are constantly thinking about the balance between friction and fraud prevention, right? In order to make sure that the bad actors don't come in to do what they do, you have to allow a certain level of friction so that you can weed out the bad actors and only allow the true customers to come in.
So I think that was a really interesting topic that we've seen come up time and time again of when is friction purposeful.
On that one, I want to bring up one other, which is Dunkin' Donuts, a personal favorite of mine, where the friction was reduced so much that it impacted revenue negatively. Because you would be driving by and it would automatically create your order and you could just say yes or no and it's your regular, but that stops add-on purchases. And so that feature was stopped because we want add-on purchases. So purposeful friction in that situation was desired. Make sure that you get them into the store, but make sure that they don't stop at their regular. That one broke me actually for a while. It truly did.
So Nick, let's talk about the next 25 episodes and where do we think, what are the hot topics that are emerging in frictionless digital experiences that we'll want to talk about with guests and with our own episodes?
The unpredictably predictable AI is an easy one to go after. I mean, we talked about it in our episode, just me and you, on how AI is going to change the buying experience. And I'm excited for it, but I'm also cautiously optimistic because you're looking at the ability to use a specific buying platform that is unified. Let's say ChatGPT and Shopify in our previous example. I mean, that's going to change a lot when that goes live. And if people really do start buying through that channel, I mean, it's just a game of channels, of course, but if people really do start buying through that channel, we're going to see some very fascinating trends over the course of the next, 6 months, 6 years.
So I think AI, a general take, AI is going to change a lot of things. And I think what will be interesting is when we talked about that, and it's been a month or two since we talked about that, we were talking about how brands were thinking about it and starting to respond. What will be interesting is if in 6 months we have a guest who has done something with AI shopping and made it that, and talk about what they learned from that. That would be super interesting to be kind of on the early side of that and what we're seeing.
Yeah, and you're already seeing brands that have been guests that didn't have AI live, that have AI live now and are doing something with it. I mean, you know, where I really started my digital career with Home Depot, they now have the Magic Apron, which is, you know, it's something that we always wanted. We always said the digital apron this and the digital apron that, which was basically trying to say, hey, we're going to help you guide and get the know-how to DIY this yourself using the website. And now that's what the Magic Apron's helping you do. It's you can go through and use this AI that's going to help you get the right DIY steps or get the right product for your specific use case. I'll tell you, I will happily admit I've tried now 4 times to repair my shower tile. You know how I finally figured out my problem the whole time? AI. I was using the wrong type of grout. I was using a air-based drying grout, not a chemical-based grout. And AI solved my problem. And so I kept on using this air-based drying grout, and it kept on failing because that's not appropriate for shower tile, because it's on the floor. It's actually the mortar, the grout and mortar was the problem, but it kept on just fading away. AI fixed my problem. And where did I go to buy that? None other than the Home Depot.
Well, I think closely related to that in AI and what we'll start to see brands experimenting and having some great results that would be great to talk about on the show is how they're using it for personalization. Because it's kind of it's not just about the shopping experience, but it's the personalization. And AI has the power to personalize in a way that even when we wrote the book, An Audience of One, wasn't possible back then. But we talked about the vision of where you really want to go. Now it's possible with AI. So I think it would be great to get a guest. We're kind of doing this as a recruiting tape. So if anybody's listening and you're actually doing this, reach out to us. We'd love to have you as a guest. What are other topics that we think will come up?
Simplification. I think we're in a environment right now that is just loaded with too many features and too many things that exist within the digital space. And this comes down to a favorite topic of mine, product and developer bias. You're in your own little ecosystem. You're in your own little mind. You're in your own little world. You're on a great machine and you're developing all these feature-rich platforms. That is going to have to slice down, because no matter how good our infrastructure is as a nation, or no matter how good it is as a individual organization, it's never going to be matched. And we're always going to be at the bleeding edge and developing for the bleeding edge, but not everyone's always there. Only a subset of your customers, a small subset of your customers is there. You have to simplify for all of your customers. And if you don't, then you're just going to start losing a bunch of them. And that's where we are going to optimize. Another thing that also I heard just recently, millennials are the generation of computers, but no longer. Gen Z and beyond generation alpha, which my kids are, they're mobile phone generation. They don't even know how to use computers anymore. It's a mobile phone generation coming through. So forget about computers, because computers are out. Business is going to happen on phones, and we're going to find out that phones are going to predominantly be the experiences we care about. We always have been talking about mobile first for as long as I've been in digital, but it's going to be taken to the next level, because it's not going to be mobile first. It's going to be mobile only. Just like you're seeing tablets are functionally out of our analytics, desktops are going to be functionally out of our analytics in 3 years' time.
Well, interesting thought about what's coming. So excited to see where our next 25 episodes go. It's been a blast doing the show with you, and I look forward to another 25 episodes.
Just 25?
Okay.
I thought we were shooting 100.
Okay, let's vote for another 50 then. Another 50.
Yes.
It makes me tired to think about, but yes, it's a bit of work, but it's been a great experience. So
hey, one episode at a time, and all of a sudden you're at 100.
That's true. So, all right. Well, this has been the Frictionless Experience. Thanks for tuning in. And if you haven't followed us after 50 episodes, come on. What are you waiting on for? Go ahead and follow us on your favorite podcast app. It would be great if you don't think this is the worst podcast ever, go ahead and give us a good review. That will also help get more people to know about the Frictionless Experience. You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn or Nick on LinkedIn. I am at Chuck Moxley.
I am in Paladino.